Empower People works for disadvantaged women who are victims or potential victims of violence, including domestic violence, honor crimes, killing and trafficking or other type of slavery, and provides them shelter, proper counseling, legal support and other help required. The community work involves creating awareness and conducting livelihood programs.
Hi dear friends, hope you're all doing well. Today we are doing the webinar on the topic Fight Against Racism Amidst the Pandemic. My name is Durga. I'm a freelance writer, RJ Tutorial Radio. And we have Chaitanya, who's a video journalist working in New York Times. Right now he's at home and working from home. And Shafiq ji doesn't need any introduction. Is you all know, the founder of Empower People, who received Grinnell College Innovator, Grinnell Award Social Innovator for Social Justice Prize in 2019. And we are all going to talk about what's happening right now throughout the world. It started in US and then it slowly spread to other countries. It's not Corona. Of course, Corona is still there. But people came out for justice because a few days ago, George Floyd, who was just out, and somebody called the police. They should have taken him to jail, in prison, but they decided to torture him. The guy put his knee on his neck for more than 8 minutes. And that caused his death. After that, people did not care about Corona. They just came out. They were angry. They want justice. They want to fight. They want to end the police brutality. So, since that day, protests are continuing. And because of those protests, the police officer who was responsible got arrested very quickly. It never happened like that. And then later on, after a few days, the other 3 officers were also arrested. And we have to see what kind of punishment they're going to give them. So I'm going to start with a poem written by Maya Angelou, my favorite poet. And this is called Still I Rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I will rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Because I walk like I have got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I will rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head, and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard? Because I laugh like I have got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I will rise. Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling. I bear in the tide, leaving behind nights of terror and fear. I rise into a daybreak that's wondrously clear. I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. So I'm going to share my experience of watching racism in US. It has been 25 years we're living in US. When I was in ninth grade, we read Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. I hope most of you know about that novel, especially the part when Eliza has to cross the bare feet in the ice to get to Canada. We cried. We were kids, but we cried. We are aware of the slavery of African Americans, but since we came to this country and started to observe everything, we realized that slavery was abolished. We thought situation must be better, but not everything was fine. There are inner cities where poor African Americans, Latinos, and other minorities live. Mostly poor African Americans live in tough conditions. I needed to know more. Why are these people like this? I went to library and got a book about Black Panther Party, which was fighting for the equal rights of the African Americans. I understood what happened and what is happening. The American government slowly killed the movement, and some of the leaders were killed and some were imprisoned. Then they flooded the African American communities with drugs, liquor, weapons, so that families will break. They get addicted to the drugs, kids drop out from the schools, There's no proper health care system that they can afford to. The schools were not well equipped, and teachers, Caucasian, that is white teachers from suburbs, in case they get a job in the inner city schools, they cannot work. They quit. They're scared of those black spoiled kids who carry weapons like knives to schools. Those are pen knives. Whenever I saw them in the city, because in suburbs we do not get to see them a lot, I realized one thing when I saw them. I remembered the lower caste, so called untouchables in India. I thought they must face same kind of situations. Even though everything looks okay from outside, but there's much racism, discrimination going on from inside. I have seen people working in small jobs than whites. They resemble poor, untouchable, low caste people in India. All the efforts were made from the government to make sure that majority of the minority African Americans should not get into executive positions. Their economic status should always be low. I saw them mostly in petty jobs, just like before slavery, but only difference is they get paid and make them feel like they are free to do whatever they want. But that's not the reality. They suffer with more health problems. African Americans suffer from high blood pressure, diabetes, heart problems, obesity, etc. In the recent corona deaths, the minorities, especially African Americans, were the ones who lost their lives in large numbers. I have some small statistics. African Americans, it's a health issue. African American adults are 60% more likely than non Hispanic white adults to have been diagnosed with diabetes by a physician. In 2016, non Hispanic blacks were 3.5 times more likely to be diagnosed with end stage renal disease as compared to non Hispanic whites. In 2016, non Hispanic blacks were 2.3 times more likely to be hospitalized for lower limb amputations as compared to non Hispanic whites. In 2017, African Americans were twice as likely as non Hispanic whites to die from diabetes. The unemployment rate of blacks or African Americans is 5.4%, while whites 3.2%, Asians 2%, Hispanics and Latinos 4.1%. According to a study about race and consequences, an examination of police abuse in America by Nicole L. Martin and Augustine J. Kaposwa. Recent police brutality cases have portrayed similar themes of African Americans being the prime targets, although they are unarmed. Police forces have not provided sufficient protection to African Americans. This lack of protection is primarily due to erroneous stereotypes of African Americans as being suspicious and threatening. Black people are 3 times more likely to be killed by police than white people. 30% of black victims were unarmed in 2015 compared to the 19% of white victims. African Americans were far more likely to be killed by America's largest cities' police departments. Friday, when I tried to talk about this topic on the radio show, when one person said, Madam, I do not think that police officer did not try to kill him. If he wanted to kill him, he could have shot him. Why would he do that? I condemn this, and I'm not saying this is the right thing. He added, I lost it. I said, that was the power. He wanted to show everyone there are other ways to kill too, not just shoot him. How many mothers are losing their sons, wives losing husbands, kids losing their fathers, siblings losing their brothers, grandparents losing their grandchildren, etc. According to the 2015 police report, 59 of the nation's largest 60 city police departments killed civilians in just 2015. They do not need any reason to kill the black people. Overall, in 2019, 24% of all police killings were of black Americans, when just 13% of the US population is black. And 11-point discrepancy. Mapping police violence also showed that 99% of all officers involved in all police killings had no criminal charges pressed against them. In 2015 alone, more than 1,000 people were killed in police killing, black people. And how many people were punished? Just one guy. Just one. The others were given desk jobs and they were just suspended and then brought them back to the jobs again. How long this is going to continue? People were in their home for the past few months because of the COVID-19. They lost their school kids' meals were distributed every single day, waiting in the big queues for food, sitting at home, social distancing, so they won't get the disease. Suddenly, this happens, and people got hurt. And they are getting tired of these killings. The protesters are walking in thousands of numbers in every city, but they're not scared of getting COVID-19. They realize that enough is enough. It is the time to put an end to this kind of killings. They're asking the government officials to stop talking and start listening to what they are saying. They want this racism to end. In any family, parents are supposed to teach their kids to live without fear, right? But just think what is happening in African American families. They're teaching their kids to stay put Do not resist if the police officer stops and treats them suspiciously. Do not argue with them. Just be polite. Do not carry any weapons, etc. Literally, they are worried, scared, terrified for their children, and worry whether they will come home or not. If they get little bit late, I can imagine what they must be going through. Yesterday, we went to participate in the protest in Philadelphia. A whole family felt like we have to walk along with the people who are fighting against racism, police brutality, and for justice. We know we have to be incredibly careful. It was an extremely hard day. I have scoliosis. I cannot walk long distances. So I was in wheelchair and my son was pushing the wheelchair. But it felt so good to be among those people. We were watching daily protests, donating something did not make us satisfied. We have to be with the people and walk with them. We made the banners and carry like Black Lives Matter, Justice for George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, etc. At least when people need people, we should be there. We were incredibly careful and hoping that these protests throughout the world should definitely bring changes, bring change like racism should be abolished, police brutality stopped, and in George Floyd's case, all the officers get punished. So these are the things that I observe and what we are going through right now. Now Chaitanya is going to talk about South Asians react to racism.
Yeah, I think as my mom said just now, like there's a long history of oppression and racism against African Americans in America, and I think that as we move forward and we think about ways that we all can contribute to ending racism, to whether it's abolishing the police or defunding them or avoiding police brutality, we have to all look at our own communities and think about how we can have conversations with our own communities to combat racism. And I think a movement that has been taking place in the last few years is that it's not enough just to be not racist. You have to be actively anti-racist. And that's something that we in the South Asian community need to really think about, how we can be actively anti-racist. It's not okay to just be silent and say, well, we're not white, we're not contributing to this system of racism. You have to actively, if you're going to be part of this country, if you're going to be part of humanity, you have to actively work against racism. And there's ways specifically for Asian Americans and South Asian Americans that we have a history of, we have parallels, and we have ways in which we've contributed to anti-Blackness. And I think one thing that I'll bring up first to talk about is the idea of the model minority. And that's something that, for those who might not be familiar or don't live in America, there's this idea of in America itself that Asian Americans or other non-Black minorities are somehow the model minority because they've been able to achieve certain levels of financial, academic, and political success. So sometimes especially a lot of white people use this, but even people in our own community use this, but they point to, well, if racism existed, then why is it that Indian Americans are so wealthy? Or if racism existed, why are so many, Asian Americans at high institutions in academia? And I think it's a lazy excuse, and it's a lazy way that white people use to deflect from the idea of racism still existing. But then we, in our community, a lot of people take that too. So I've heard many people say that, I am an Indian American. I know that I've faced racism, but I came here and I made my own way, and I fought hard and I worked hard, and now I'm successful. So if I can do it, why can't, African Americans do it? And we take it as many times through, whether it's before, during colonialism, whatever. I think a lot of times our community absorbs the messaging and the myths that the white majority leaders perpetuate. So the fact that the model minority thing, just to take it as face value first, is it's a myth because, first of all, we are standing on the shoulders of the work and the progress that has been made because of Black activists, Black freedom movements, going back to the beginning of this country. So the fact that we're even in this country, the fact that we have the benefits we have, everything we owe to African Americans for fighting for those changes, for fighting for freedoms that they themselves do not benefit from in the same way that we do. So all of those things that they fought for led to changes in the 20th century that we kind of just glommed onto and we have now. And we don't acknowledge that we have a tremendous amount of privilege in this country because of that, And one of those things is the Immigration Act of 1965, which was an act that allowed Asian immigrants to come to America who had certain skills, highly skilled immigrants and their families to come to America. So it led to kind of a new wave of immigration of Indian Americans, Asian Americans, who were already kind of in their own countries, probably very privileged upper class, or at least had skills, that would gain them certain benefits. And they came to this country, and I think white people loved them because they could use them to certain ways. And it's no surprise that there are many Republicans love Indian Americans, and there are a lot of Indian Americans for Trump, because there are lots of common agendas between privileged Indian Americans and privileged white Americans. So, and the crazy thing is the Immigration Act of 1965, that was 3 years before there was even a Civil Rights Act in 1968, when Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, giving Black Americans certain anti-discriminatory benefits. So we were able to immigrate. We had certain benefits before that. And then we play into these myths as they arise in the later half of the 20th century and absorb them in our own communities. And it's our responsibility to address them head on, acknowledge our own privileges, but work actively to dismantle those things. And I think that the way that we absorb those myths, it goes back to, colonialism. It goes back to how India and America have a lot of parallels, but there are lots of differences as well. So we have parallels in the sense that we were both colonies. We were both white supremacist colonies. And so there's a lot of, solidarity and allyship that Indians should have with African Americans because of that. But there's also huge differences. We may experience some racism against our skin color or here, but we don't have that level of systemic racism. And that's, I think, the key difference is that Indian Americans may say sometimes, well, I've, faced, white people say things about me, or I've faced racism, but we don't face the level of systemic racism. And that's the American system is built to disenfranchise and dehumanize African Americans in a way that we are never a part of that. We may face some comments. I'm not saying that, other people don't experience racism, but it's not that level of, the system itself is built to destroy African American lives. And it's a country built and still run on white supremacy. And so we have to acknowledge that that's a huge difference. We can't just say, well, I've also experienced racism, so I got over it. Why can't they? It's an entirely different level, and you have to educate yourself and know that African Americans have been facing these struggles for years. It's the roots of slavery still exist today. The after effects of slavery still exist today in the prisons, and the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, except now there's a new culture of slavery in incarceration, disenfranchisement of voting. There's so many things that we do not face as Indian Americans. And going back to the colonial roots, that, you know, the other difference is that I think that British in India perpetuated and worked on this strategy of division, divide and conquer, and a lot of that was perpetuating myths of fairness, like skin color fairness as an ideal, and anti-blackness as a virtue. And I think there's a history of Indian Americans kind of trying to adopt or emulate or fit themselves to ideals that the colonialists put on them when they came to India to, you know, to colonize it and dismantle it. And those things, we have to acknowledge, have still kind of seeped through our culture. If we look at entertainment in India or the conversations we have, it's those things are still, those anti-black narratives are still there. We still value, you know, there's fairness cream is still sold, obviously. There's the same way that, you know, I'm always talking about, you know, casteism. Casteism is tied to anti-blackness as well. So there's, yeah, the obsession with fairness creams, the obsession with lightness, the obsession with like holding yourselves to a white ideal, trying to be white, is a huge problem in Indian communities. And it works. It's not just about us. It works to perpetuate and oppress Black people, you know? So we maybe are obsessed with this certain ideals in our own community, but we need to realize how that affects the narrative across the world. How we're working to uphold white supremacy. And there's you know, there's that, going back to the model minority thing, there's a kind of a thread in academia that in America that tends to talk about, which has come up even now, even in the last few years. It's popular, published in places like the New Yorker, the Atlantic, major publications publish these kind of vague articles arguing about how Asian Americans and Indian Americans are smart and smarter, how they're doing so successfully. And it's always couched in this idea of like, why have they done so successfully? Why are they so smart? Why? And the goal of all these articles, whether or not they actually talk about that, is to imply that Black people are inferior. And I've seen many people post those kinds of things that say like how we've done so well, how, you know, out of a pride maybe for your own community. But again, we're falling for and working with the white supremacists in this country when we tap into those myths, because ultimately the argument is that Black people are inferior, and it doesn't acknowledge the history of you know, depriving African American communities of resources, of education, of access that we as Indian Americans have always had. So I think that's the major thing, is I think we need to acknowledge and work against how our culture's ideals and narratives perpetuate anti-Blackness. But there's also, I think, beyond that, going into kind of what you were talking about with casteism, there's also, I think, we need to look at the ways in which we have solidarity and parallels with African Americans. And by we, I mean, actually, it's more working class South Asian Americans. There was an instance this past week, I think maybe a lot of people saw, there was a restaurant that was looted in Minneapolis. It was an Indian restaurant. It was a Bangladeshi or Bengali restaurant.
Yeah.
Gandhi Mahal. And the owner, Mr. Islam, he came out And let me just read from this article from the Times. He said, as wounds were bandaged and hands were held in the front room, Ruhel Islam was in the kitchen preparing dal, basmati rice, and naan for the protesters. Overnight, the fire from the 3rd Precinct reached the Gandhi Mahal and it was severely damaged. Still, Mr. Islam said, let my building burn.
Yeah.
Justice needs to be served.
Yes.
And I think that's something that I think there's a lot of upper class Indians in America that wouldn't be able to relate to that. But there are many, many working class South Asians in America who do relate to and see daily the plight of African Americans in their communities that they serve. There's in Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, which we watched last night. There's an Asian American store owner who works in a Black community in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, and he has a lot more solidarity with the African Americans. He sees daily how they're oppressed. Mm-hmm. So there's issues of class we need to look at too, but there's opportunities for us to have solidarity. There's Bangladeshi in the same article, Bangladeshi American who came to America, who's a store owner. He said that he came from a country in Bangladesh that had a police state that would abuse and torture people in the streets, and he sees the same parallels with how the police are brutalizing and torturing African Americans in this country. So I think, we need to look at this country has all of these problems, that there are global problems as well, but we need to have solidarity and stand with African Americans today and fight against these things and have these difficult conversations.
That was nice, Jagni. And now Shafiq ji is going to talk about racism in India, which is a wide subject. Shafiq ji.
Yeah, thank you. Ji, thank you, Durga ji, and thank you, Chaitanya. This was really insightful. And I'm not with any data, but yes, I would love to share about things like my experience with the people in India and the system with the India and everything. So racism in India is something which is almost forgotten subject. People never discuss about this racism kind of thing. Most of the time, we have different words, but the same symptoms of the racism. So we are obsessed with white color, and people call it like European obsession because we were colony of the Britain. But when I see things from my eyes, I have realized like these things are, racism are always been there in Indian culture and our culture. Maybe it is by name of caste, and maybe it is by name of different other identities, region and everything. So India is really a diverse country, and we have Mul Nivasis of different kind. Like Nagaland people are not immigrant people. They are son of soil. Assamese are not foreigners. They are son of soil. Same like South Indian states, like Tamils are not foreigners. They are son of soil. So son and daughter of soil, of course. So Marathi people are not immigrants. So we have very diverse ancient country, and this racism thing is always working there, and it has been working since long. Like this is not new thing. But unfortunately, we had no movement against such racism and no voice such racism and anything. So we prefer using different other words for the racism. If we will go through with current movement and everything, we can see like a movement of Dalits and OBCs, like Pichla movement and backward caste movement, and then Dalit movement. And now new movement is emerging from Muslim community of the India. So, but this is not only about identity of caste or religion. It has become a kind of race. Like yesterday, I was doing internet, and then I realized like LGBT community of Kashmir is on two parts. One is a Hindu LGBT community, and the another is a Muslim LGBT community of Kashmir. The both people comes from the same area, but because of their religious identity, they are they have two different organization or debate. So religion has emerged like a new ethnic identity, and both people are obsessed with this. I'm not expert on racism or caste issues, of course, but I have learned a lot from my own experience while working with the people and understanding their ideas and everything. So we have problem with color and face and different appearance and everything. We have some African and Indian community in India. They are known as Siddhi community. Before yesterday, 3 Siddhi men were brutally beaten up by the people in Gujarat. So they looks like African. They are African Indian, and they are living here since long, at least 7 or 800 years, and they have nothing in their communities. They have no stake anywhere in India. Similarly, when Corona pandemic emerged in India, so people were calling those, North Eastern people as Corona or something like that. So we have different kind of obsession, not only obsessed with the color, because people of Nagaland are more fairer than us. So we are more black than them. But so we have different layer of racism, and it is not identical on one thing. Like if someone will meet me as a person, first he will ask my name, and then he will fix his prejudice and racism according to that, and then he will ask my caste, then he will settle things, and then he will ask my region of origin. Like I am from Bihar, so being Bihari is really difficult for you in India, and being Shafiqur Rahman is really difficult these days. So we have different type of bias, and if I see myself as a racist, I can find like, yes, I too have different level of racism, and I have different type of prejudice. And this is not only prejudice, because we are not only discriminating people on the basis of their color, region, religion, or caste or ethnicity, but also we are trying to impose our superiority over them. So the problem of racism in India is about power game. It is also about when you will talk to those people and discuss with those people, you will realize like rapists and racists have same mental line. They have same almost same argument about everything. You have shared a lot of things about American African people, and that about their health, about their education, about different other kind of living standard. So these are major argument for racist people to mingle them and blame them that if you cannot care your health, how can you be part of any competition or something. So if you cannot take care of your children, if you cannot take care of different aspect of your life, how can you compete with others? So if you are in a problem, that is your problem. But actually, this is kind of system, and we provide you some way towards success. Let me give you my own personal example. Like when I was in school, one of my friends was with me in my school, and he was brilliant. I still acknowledge his brilliancy. Like he was very good at math, he was very good at English and everything. But uh, at the age of 34, we are on different level. He is not I mean able to reach on some points. He is still struggling for the life, and I'm not sure if he will succeed in his life or not. So it was about caste, it was about his identity and his social mobility. So in India, your caste, your religion, your face, your feature, your language are tool for your social mobility. If you have some kind of favorable layers with you, then you will definitely achieve the success. And if you don't have those things in favor of you, you are not going to achieve those success. But uh, since since 80s, 1980s, there was a Pichra movement. I mean, backward caste movement, which has enabled different type of people to participate in political and social system, and they are coming with the force, and they become a star in different states, different sector of the of the whole arena. And then Dalit movement was there, and they push different type of people into mainstream. And now, since last year, Muslims are asserting their right and identity and everything. I don't want to discuss how things are going and how people are responding to it. But I will try to explain like why people try to do this. Most of the time, when you will talk about racism or different kind of discrimination, people have simple solution of it, that uh, people who are oppressing others were oppressed in past. This is a major tool for justifying racism in India. But this is not fact. People who are oppressing others were never been oppressed by anyone. They were always part of operation system, and they were always partner with the oppressors. Oppressed people were always been oppressed, and they are still being oppressed in different name. So people are speaking, and people are using different platform to speak their mind, and people are learning about that. And we can only engage different kind of people with the whole process. And we all need to start discussion about the racism, because racism is a kind of condition. If you are racist today, you can become a pro equality tomorrow. So that is not disease that will never go. That is a simple sardi jukam kind of thing. So if you will take medicine today, you can overcome from this problem. So racism is not only problem of the oppressed; it is also a problem for the oppressor, who the racist people. The problem is simple. They need some psychological support. They need some kind of psychological response from the oppressed community, different communities, and as well as the system, because only system can help them in understanding different aspect of the problem. So in India, we have seen, and we discuss a lot of different type of operation, direct murder, direct police brutality, organized rape, and every bad thing is there. So and I don't want to discuss those bad things, like how people are doing things. So I'm interested in discussing like how to overcome from those problems, and how we need to understand. Like, give me an allow me to give an example. Like 2 days ago, elephant was killed in Kerala, and yesterday a cow was killed in Himachal Pradesh. So people have different type of outrage for both killing, and I'm giving an example from animals, because most of us, and most of the people who tend to be racist are animal lovers. Sorry. So they used to show them like we are animal lover, but they are not. Actually, they are using those things for a purpose. They are using different layer of belief system for a purpose. So this is not only about political gain. This is not only about social gain, but also about personal frustration. So most of racist people are personally frustrated people, and they are low esteemed people, and they can be reformed with the process. So I have met a very powerful CEO of definitely a company, and he had a lot of different, bad opinion about everyone except him and his caste. So I was regularly in touch with him and discussing things and everything. And then I realized he actually hates his own caste as well, but he feels like his gotra is more superior than other gotras in his caste. So these people are really sick people. They do not believe their things for a reason. They do not believe things for believing something, having belief or tradition or something. No, they actually believe things just to demean others, just to push others down. That's it. I have met number of core religious people who really love their religion, and they are really obsessed with their religion, but they do not hate others. So we know both type of people, and they are not racist, because they have some kind of satisfaction from their own thing, and they are not privileged people. They are simple people, and they believe in their religion, they believe in their thing and everything, but they do not discriminate others. And even if they discriminate others, they never use this for pushing anyone back. They always discriminate people for their religious purpose. So I'm not saying people to do not discriminate anyone. Go discriminate. I have no problem with that at this stage. first you have to understand that you are discriminating someone. The problem with you or me is that when we are discriminating someone, we actually believe that they deserve that. You are just you. I mean, you are just uh, 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 you are normal, and you are just doing what needed to be done. But and this is not fact. Every person. I was born in Bihar, and I have a strong. I am from a strong Hindi belt, so I have my own problems and privileges. So and I was born in a Muslim family, and I have a caste, and I can see like being being having a caste of with the title of Khan. Uh, I have discriminated people and realized later. So this is not about being a saint for individuals. Uh, uh, our laws and our constitution and our different statecraft needs to be improved, but only if people will participate in believing that they discriminate people on the basis of caste, region, religion, color, feature, posture, and everything. They need to understand. And before we reach out to the common people, before we reach out to the different other people, we need to reach out with the social workers. We need to reach out with the those who believe that they are changing the world. Actually, they are part of problem. They believe in racism, and they often ignore participation of those who are their beneficiaries. So we need to make them understand that as well. And also this racism thing is often used for slavery, not only in US but also in India. Like, we have different type of slavery, and even in modern day slavery you can see like how people are using different identities for the people. Like, most of the time when I see anything, I used to see like, okay, there is bride trafficking, and I have to see this thing with that context. So most of the bride trafficking survivors were taught and I mean, informed that they are inferior because of their regional identity, and they are poor because of their personal regional ethnic identities. So these are really great and grave problem with our community and with our people. We need to understand that the day we will start working on these things, there will be a movement for civic rights of the different people. My name is Shafiq, and I am citizen of India. uh, uh, and I do not believe in those two sentences. I believe in my name is Shafiqur Rahman Khan, and I belong to this caste and that religion, and my forefathers were those people, and this. So every time we were to prove that we are superior than others, and this is our this is in our whole social craft. And that is why Indian Americans believe in joining hands with white supremacists. They often ignore speaking for justice, but this time when America is now protesting, number of Indian people are there, and they are participating in those that movement. and this is beautiful. And we are discussing racism in this century. This is really ugly, but at least we are discussing. This is beautiful. Thank you. I was really unorganized about everything, so I have a lot of things to say, but I cannot, yeah. Thank
You
you,
were good,
Durgaji, for this
Shafiq ji.
opportunity.
You were very good. Don't
Thank you.
say that you're unorganized. You were very good. Yeah, you made very important points, and that is more important to know, you know. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Indians are get used to that kind of thing, you know. We have like the Kamwali servants
Yeah.
in our houses. Yeah, we get used to that. We don't want to do our chores. We want somebody to do our chores, right? And
Yeah.
so that's how we got used to that, and that's why we look down upon African Americans here, because we are born and brought up in that kind of lifestyle, and that is still continuing.
Yeah, and I want to just add one last thing. You said about acknowledging our own privilege and looking at, you know, how sometimes the most privileged people are the ones perpetuating racism. And I think, like, you know, that's why it's important to speak to our own communities. And I, you know, just from my own personal experience, I've had people in my family that we know who have said things that are racist, and then I didn't confront them about it, and I just let it go because I didn't know how to talk. Like I've had, when I was in India, I don't know, when it was like 4 or 5 years ago, or maybe before, but there was some African people who were living down the street from where we were staying, and I remember someone in my family said, you know, just be careful when you go out because they'll steal something from you, or they said some horrible things, and I said, you know, I don't think that's true, but I didn't confront them. I didn't say anything more than that, and I should have, and I'm embarrassed that I didn't. And I've had, you know, my cousin, cousins of ours who have come to America, and when they came, you know, for their own graduate school or for their own to become part of America, and would say when they went out with us, see African Americans, they would say horrible things to us about them.
Yeah.
And I should have said more. I should have talked to them more. And I think that that's something that's common in all of our families is we probably have people like that, all of us. And it's not enough to just not be racist ourselves, but we have to talk to the people that we know in our families. That's where it should start.
Yeah. That's what we are trying to tell people. You know, you have to start conversations with your own family. Don't think that children should not know, children should not see this. They need to know what's happening. Why is it important? So that's what we're trying to do. Let's see. I mean, I know my family doesn't like to talk this. Nobody's watching this. Nobody supports.
Yeah.
Why did you go? You have health problems, but why did you go
To protest.
to the protest? Yeah, I mean, that's what they say, but we need to do something about it. Yeah, that's what we are trying, at least. So thank you so much, Shafiq ji, Chaitanya. And Aruna Miller, thank you so much for your comments, for watching this. That's an encouragement. This is the first time they're doing 9:30 slot. Because of us, they changed the time. Maybe that's why not many people are watching. So this is the first time that they changed the time. After they usually have Kavi Sammelan from 8 to 9 o'clock. And because of our timings, they said, can you do 9 o'clock, 9:30? that's why they changed the time. Maybe it didn't work. Not many people are watching. I'm so sorry about that. But those who joined us and watching and sharing comments, thank you so much. Thank you, Shafikji and Chaitanya and Rima in the backstage.
Thank you.
Almost all of us want to do something for the larger society and try to give back to our people. But we all have limitations. We see and feel for people in difficult circumstances, and we also know that the lives of people living in extreme poverty and in difficult conditions are inevitably bound with our own lives and identities. Let's come together, speak your mind, share your ideas, and together we can work to improve the lives of people in need. Join us for online meetings. Let's discuss and plan the way forward. As shall you use your expertise, so shall others, and together we can truly make a difference. Our target is to rescue women in slavery, women who are bought and sold like products in the market for the purpose of marriage, women who are then mistreated and abandoned to their own devices due to lack of support from the family, the community, and society at large. They constitute a new generation of the oppressed. A denial of their basic human rights is the biggest threat to our development and sustainability as a species. As a first step, simply come and register at our website www.empowerpeople.in. Our team will get in touch with you. We look forward to seeing you join hands, hearts and minds with us. Add in your bid to keep the flame of compassion, service and humanity alive.